Well, here's the decomposition of the fundamental archetype. The dragon of chaos differentiates on the one hand into the feminine, that's the unknown, and the feminine differentiates further into the negative feminine and the positive feminine. The negative feminine is the reason for witch hunts. It's the reason for, you know, there's a whole group online called Men Going Their Own Way, MGTOW. That's a very interesting group to go study. There's lots of them. I don't know how many of them there are, and most of them are older. Many of them are men who've been through a particularly horrifying divorce for one reason or another, and they've had enough of women. So they tell the young men that they're teaching, never have a permanent relationship, never share your territory with a woman, never share your possessions, make sure you never live together, and don't stay with one long enough to enter a common law relationship because you will be stripped of everything that you have. Well, that's a hell of a thing to be telling people, but what's happened is that the female has been manifested in their life only as the negative archetype, and they've got that confused with all women. And that's partly, you know, you got to ask yourself, if you know the mythological stories, maybe if you made the right sacrifices you wouldn't have so much trouble with women. It's a good question to ask yourself first. And I would also say, you know, if you're a woman who has trouble with men, or you're a man who has trouble with women, it's not the women and it's not the men, it's you. Because the women are telling you what's wrong with you, and the men are telling you what's wrong with you. And if you don't listen, then it's you. It's either you or all men. Well, that's easy, it's all men. Well, that's certainly how it's played out in the world right now. It's like, no, it's not all men. You can be sure, by definition, and it's not all women, that's for sure. I don't want to have anything to do with women. It's like, you're a pathetic weasel. That's the same statement.
Oh, this is interesting. This is from Patreon. What do you think the effect of free and widely available pornography is having on young people, especially men, in our society at this time?
Well, I think it's like Treasure Island in Pinocchio. It's all pleasure with no responsibility. That's deadening. It's parasitical in a sense, and I don't mean that, I'm not making a value judgment. I mean, it's no wonder the young guys are caught up in this, because it's an unbelievably powerful technology. It drove the development of the internet, let's not forget, yeah. Right? So it taps into one viciously primordial motivation. And so these guys are being blasted by what biologists call superstimuli all the time. So imagine that there's a biological stimulus that has an effect on you, and then you can magnify it. And the typical porn actress, not the amateurs, but the professionals, have their sexually provocative physical elements exaggerated. Mm-hmm. And so men are very visual in terms of their sexual processing. And so, you know, the guys are pulled into it, and they're pulled into it also by curiosity. But I think that ethically it's not good. It's not good. It's an easy out. That's the other thing, you know, yeah. What you should be doing is going out and finding someone to have a relationship with. And if you can gratify yourself with no transformation, but let's say you can't find someone, well, then you might say that's an indication you should change. Mm-hmm. It is, in fact, an indication that you should change, because what better indication are you going to get than that no one wants to be intimate with you? Right. It's the ultimate rejection, and that's partly why men are terrified of it, and I understand that. And I also understand the MGTOW guys, you know, who are just recommending that men don't enter into long-term permanent relationships with women. I understand where they're coming from, although I called them pathetic weasels a while back. I shouldn't have done that.
See, that's where I said to you, are you worried about every little thing that you say? Once you say some...
Well, they're providing a lot of young guys who need a kick to go out there.
Right, they're actually giving them the back door.
They're giving them a rationale, yeah, and I've seen this have very detrimental effects on a number of people already, and partly in my clinical practice, because these guys, the young guys who aren't successful, they're looking for a reason why women are terrible, because otherwise they have to think, well, they're just not presentable, which is what they do have to think, because that's almost the definition of presentable, right? So, and then the MGTOW guys give them a rationale. You know, we are in a gynocentric world, and females have got control, and they'll like wipe you out if they have the opportunity. It's like, well, Some females will do that to some guys some of the time, and sometimes it's brutal. I've had clients who've been dragged through the court systems and just ruined, and I was unable to help them. I did everything I could to maneuver and negotiate and plan and strategize so carefully to get them to do everything right, and it didn't help. I mean, the court systems can be absolutely brutal to men. It's awful.
Is there an instance where you feel you said something that appeared to be true to you at the time, and knowing what you know?
Yes, I think I was a little dismissive of the men going their own way, because I think I called them pathetic weasels, and I had my reasons for that. My reasons were, roughly speaking, that
Who are the men going their own way, just for context?
Well, they're a group of people, mostly on the net, who've been burned in their relationships, or who conceptualize themselves as having been burned in their relationships, and they believe that the legal structure in particular in Western countries is so tilted against men, particularly in family dispute situations and divorce settlement, that it's safer for men not to establish permanent relationships with women, not to cohabit with them, ever. And they're a large movement. Now, how large they are, I don't know, but they're large enough. And they have what I would regard as an undue influence over relatively bitter and resentful young men who haven't had great success in the dating market and who are looking for a rationale to write off all women because they're so hurt by their continual rejection. And that is not good for those young men. And so the reason that I disparaged the men going their own way was because I had seen the pernicious effect, these are often older guys, the pernicious effect of their world-weary philosophy on young men. Now, these guys think that they're just warning them, and they are warning them, but they're not just warning them. Now, the reason I regret calling them pathetic weasels is because they also have a point. I do believe that the court systems are staggeringly anti-male, absurdly, horribly anti-male. And I've seen my own clients, some of them who are really, really decent, hardworking, family-oriented people, demolished by the court systems. And so the men going their own way have a point. And so I'm sorry that I called them pathetic weasels. But I outlined my reasons. And so, yes, I do regret